The first thing you need to understand is that people rarely become interested in someone who is desperately trying to be noticed. The harder you chase attention, the more obvious your need becomes. You begin checking who noticed you, wondering why someone hasn't replied, trying to make conversations last longer, posting things hoping a particular person will see them, and constantly adjusting yourself according to other people's reactions. And slowly, without realizing it, you become predictable. You are always there, always available, always responding, always trying to be remembered. But attention works differently when it comes from genuine presence rather than desperation. The person who doesn't need to be noticed often becomes the person people notice, not because they are playing games, not because they are pretending to be mysterious, but because their attention is directed towards something larger than being validated. They have a life, they have standards, they have interests, they have discipline, they are building something. And when someone is deeply engaged with their own purpose, there is a certain quality in their presence that cannot be manufactured. Think about the difference between someone who enters a room desperately looking for approval and someone who enters quietly, comfortable with themselves, focused on what they came to do. The second person doesn't need to dominate the room. They don't need to speak the loudest. They don't need to prove they are important. Their composure creates curiosity. People begin wondering what makes them so comfortable. What are they focused on? Why don't they seem desperate for attention? What are they thinking? That curiosity is far more powerful than constantly demanding to be seen. This is why you should stop measuring your value by how much attention you receive. If you need constant attention to feel valuable, you become dependent on other people's behavior. Someone replies quickly and you feel important. Someone ignores you and suddenly you question yourself. Someone compliments you and your confidence rises. Someone criticizes you and your confidence collapses. That isn't confidence, that's emotional dependence. Real confidence comes from knowing that your life has meaning even when nobody is watching. Work on yourself when nobody applauds. Learn when nobody notices. Exercise when nobody compliments you. Build your skills when nobody cares. Keep your promises to yourself when there is no audience, because eventually the internal discipline you build in private becomes visible in public. And people notice results, they notice competence, they notice calmness. They notice someone who doesn't need to constantly announce what they're doing because the evidence is already there. This doesn't mean you should become distant or cold. Be warm, be genuine, be interested in people. Listen, law, connect. But don't make connection your entire identity. You should be able to enjoy someone's presence without needing their attention to feel complete. You should be able to have a conversation without desperately trying to impress them. You should be able to leave without wondering whether they will think about you afterward. That emotional independence creates a different kind of presence. And there's another important shift. Stop trying to be interesting and start becoming interested. People can feel when you're performing. If every conversation is designed to make you look intelligent, mysterious, successful, or desirable, the interaction becomes exhausting. But when you genuinely listen, ask meaningful questions, and pay attention to what another person is saying, you create an experience. They don't simply remember your words, they remember how comfortable they felt around you. They remember that you actually listened. They remember the energy of the conversation. That becomes the foundation for the next stage, learning how to leave an emotional impression rather than simply trying to occupy someone's attention, because being noticed for a moment is easy. Becoming memorable is something deeper. The reason some people stay in your mind long after the conversation ends has very little to do with how much they talked. It has more to do with what you felt in their presence. They didn't necessarily tell you everything about themselves. They didn't constantly demand your attention. They simply created an emotional experience that your mind naturally wanted to revisit. That is the difference between being noticed and being remembered. Anyone can make noise. Anyone can send endless messages. Anyone can tell you how interesting, successful, intelligent, or different they are. But when someone is constantly trying to prove their value, you begin to feel the effort behind the performance. Real presence doesn't feel like a performance. It feels natural. And one of the strongest ways to become memorable is to stop focusing so heavily on what you want people to think about you and start focusing on what people experience when they are around you. Make conversations meaningful. Listen when others speak. Remember small details. Ask questions that go beyond the surface. Don't interrupt simply because you're waiting for your turn to talk. Give people your full attention when you're with them. These things sound simple, but they are increasingly rare. Most people are physically present while mentally somewhere else. They're checking their phones, thinking about what they'll say next, worrying about how they're being perceived, or trying to impress the person in front of them. So when someone actually listens, the difference becomes noticeable. They feel seen, and people tend to remember the person who made them feel seen. But emotional impact isn't only about being warm. Sometimes what makes someone memorable is the contrast they create. They can be calm in a chaotic environment. They can be confident without being arrogant. They can disagree without becoming hostile. They can laugh without needing approval. They can walk away without making the other person feel abandoned or punished. Their emotional stability becomes part of the experience, and that stability creates curiosity. People begin to wonder what is happening beneath the surface. Why are they so calm? Why don't they seem desperate? Why don't they need everyone to agree with them? Why does their attention feel valuable? These questions can naturally create psychological interest without you deliberately trying to manipulate anyone. And there is another important principle. Don't reveal everything at once, and not because you should play games. Not because you should pretend to be mysterious, but because genuine relationships develop through discovery. If someone learns everything about you in one conversation, there is little room left for curiosity. Share what is relevant. Be authentic, but allow your personality, your values, your experiences, and your ambitions to unfold naturally over time. Depth is more memorable than information. A person who tells you 20 facts about themselves may be forgotten tomorrow. A person who shares one meaningful story that connects emotionally to something you experience may stay in your mind for years. That is because memory is connected to emotion. Think about the people you remember from your own life. You probably don't remember every sentence they said. You remember how you felt. You remember the conversation that made you laugh when you needed it. You remember the person who believed in you when you doubted yourself. You remember someone who challenged you in a way that changed your thinking. You remember the person who made an ordinary moment feel significant. That is emotional presence. And emotional presence cannot be faked consistently. It comes from actually developing yourself. If you are empty inside, no communication technique will make you deeply memorable for long. You need experiences, you need values, you need purpose, you need something you're building. You need opinions that come from thought rather than imitation. You need a life that exists beyond the person you're trying to impress. Because when your inner world becomes richer, your conversations naturally become deeper. You no longer need to manufacture mystery. You become interesting because you are genuinely interested in life. And eventually, this changes the way people experience your absence. They don't remember you because you demanded that they remember you. They remember you because something about the interaction mattered. And once you understand that, the next step becomes even more powerful. Learning how to create healthy space so people have room to reflect on the experience rather than becoming overwhelmed by your constant presence. There is a moment in every connection when you need to understand the value of space, not distance created out of anger, not silence designed to punish someone, not disappearing because you want them to panic. Real space is different. It is the room you create when you stop making yourself constantly available and allow your life to exist independently of another person's attention. Because when someone has unlimited access to you, your presence can become predictable. They know you'll answer. They know you'll be there. They know you'll respond when they call. They know you'll keep the conversation alive. They know you'll make yourself available whenever they need you. And predictability can quietly reduce appreciation. This doesn't mean you should become unavailable or play emotional games. It means you should stop treating constant availability as proof of care. You can care about someone and still have your own schedule. You can enjoy someone's company and still spend time alone. You can value a relationship without making it the center of your entire life. In fact, healthy independence often makes relationships stronger because you return to them with something to share. You have experiences, you have goals, you have work, you have friendships, you have interests. You have a world that continues moving even when the other person isn't around. That creates natural space for curiosity. When you are constantly present, there is little opportunity for someone to wonder what you're doing, what you're learning, what you're thinking about, or what new part of yourself is developing. But when you are genuinely occupied with your own life, people naturally become curious, not because you manufactured absence, because you have substance outside the relationship. This distinction matters. Never disappear simply to make someone chase you. Never ignore someone to punish them. Never delay a response as a psychological trick. Those behaviors may create temporary anxiety, but they don't create genuine connection. Instead, become someone who doesn't need to manipulate availability because their life already has structure. If you're working, work. If you're exercising, exercise. If you're spending time with family or friends, be present there. If you're learning something, focus on it. If you need time alone, take it. Don't interrupt your entire life every time someone's name appears on your screen. Your attention is valuable because it is limited, and when you give it genuinely. This is another reason constant digital availability can weaken presence. If someone can reach you at every moment, your attention becomes fragmented. You're physically somewhere else, but mentally waiting for the next message. You begin measuring your connection through notifications. Did they text? Did they view it? Why haven't they replied? Are they thinking about me? That mindset creates dependence. Instead, put the phone down, return to your life. Let your attention belong to what you are actually doing. When you're with someone, be fully there. When you're away, be fully away. This creates a healthier rhythm. And sometimes that rhythm creates something psychologically important: anticipation. Anticipation gives experiences emotional space. A good conversation doesn't need to continue for 5 hours. Sometimes ending at the right moment leaves the interaction feeling complete rather than exhausted. You don't need to force every conversation to last. You don't need to keep sending messages just because the conversation is becoming quiet. You can let a good moment remain a good moment and then return to your life. That creates room for reflection. The person may remember something you said. They may replay a funny moment. They may think about a question you asked. They may wonder what you're doing next. That is far more natural than trying to force yourself into their thoughts. But there is an even deeper lesson here. Space also reveals the quality of the connection. When you stop constantly maintaining it, you discover whether the other person actually contributes. Do they reach out? Do they respect your time? Do they show genuine interest? Do they make an effort? Or were you carrying the entire relationship through constant attention? Space reveals imbalance, and once you see the imbalance, you can make better decisions. You don't need to chase someone who only responds when you chase them. You don't need to constantly entertain someone who gives nothing back. You don't need to prove your importance by remaining permanently available. Let people meet you halfway. Let relationships breathe. Let your absence be a natural result of having a meaningful life, not a weapon designed to manipulate someone else's emotions. Because when you become comfortable with space, you stop fearing it. You stop thinking that every quiet moment means rejection. You stop chasing silence with desperate communication, and you begin to understand that sometimes people need room to miss the experience of your presence. The goal isn't to make people obsessed with your absence. The goal is to build a life so full, disciplined, and authentic that you don't need constant presence to feel secure, and that independence creates the space where genuine curiosity can naturally grow. There is another quality that makes a person naturally interesting: depth. Not the kind of artificial mystery where you deliberately hide information or act distant just to make people curious, but the kind of depth that comes from having different layers to your personality, your experiences, your values, and your ambitions. People become curious about what they cannot completely understand at first. That is why you should stop trying to reveal everything about yourself immediately. You don't need to tell someone your entire history during one conversation. You don't need to explain every decision you make. You don't need to announce every goal you're pursuing. You don't need to constantly tell people what you're planning to become. Let your actions reveal you gradually. There is something powerful about discovering a person over time. One conversation reveals their humor, another reveals their values, another reveals their ambition, another reveals how they behave under pressure. And eventually, you realize there is much more beneath the surface than you initially noticed. That is real intrigue. It isn't manufactured. It develops naturally. Think about someone who tells you everything immediately, every opinion, every insecurity, every plan, every personal detail, every emotional reaction. At first, the openness may feel exciting, but eventually there is little left to discover. Now think about someone who is open but measured. They answer honestly, but they don't feel compelled to reveal everything. They speak about their goals, but they don't need applause for them. They share experiences, but they don't turn every conversation into a biography. They can be warm without being completely exposed. That balance creates depth. and depth creates curiosity. But becoming difficult to predict doesn't mean becoming inconsistent. This is an important distinction. You shouldn't randomly change your personality just to keep people guessing. You shouldn't disappear one day and become extremely available the next. You shouldn't create jealousy or confusion to maintain someone's attention. That isn't mystery, that's instability. Real depth comes from being consistent in your values while remaining flexible in your expression. People know you're respectful, but they may not know exactly what you're thinking. They know you're disciplined, but they may not know what you're working toward. They know you're confident, but they may not know every experience that built that confidence. They know you have standards, but they don't need access to every thought behind them. This creates a healthy sense of discovery, and one of the best ways to develop this quality is to build a richer inner life. Ride, learn, travel, doctorate, study human behavior, develop skills. Challenge your assumptions, have experiences that don't exist for social media. The more you experience, the more dimensions you naturally develop. You won't need to pretend to be mysterious because your life contains genuine stories, lessons, failures, achievements, and perspectives. Your conversations become deeper because you have actually thought about things. You have something to say, but you also know when not to say it. That balance matters. Not every thought needs to be spoken. Not every emotion needs to be announced. Not every plan needs an audience. There is power in letting some things remain yours. Privacy creates psychological space, and psychological space allows people to wonder. They may notice that you don't constantly broadcast your life. They may see you improving but not know every detail of the process. They may hear you mention a new interest and wonder where it came from. They may notice that your priorities have changed because your behavior has changed. That kind of curiosity is natural. And it becomes even stronger when your actions occasionally surprise people in positive ways. Maybe you're usually quiet, but when you speak, you have something meaningful to contribute. Maybe you're serious about your work, but you have a playful side that appears unexpectedly. Maybe you are confident in public, but deeply thoughtful in private. These contrasts create dimension. People remember dimension. Flat personalities are easy to understand and easy to forget. Depth takes longer to understand, and what takes longer to understand often stays in the mind longer. But don't make the mistake of becoming obsessed with being unpredictable. The moment you start performing mystery, the mystery disappears. Instead, focus on becoming a person with enough substance that nobody could understand your entire world in one conversation. Have goals, have standards, have interests, have principles, have experiences, have a private world that doesn't require constant validation. Then let people discover those layers naturally. You don't need to force curiosity. You simply need to stop giving away everything before there is a reason to, because when people sense that there is more beneath the surface, they don't need to be manipulated into thinking about you. Their own curiosity does the work. And once that depth is combined with a meaningful life, something even more powerful happens. Your attention itself becomes valuable. Your attention becomes valuable when it is connected to a valuable life. This is something most people misunderstand. They think being memorable means learning how to make someone think about you constantly. They look for psychological tricks, calculated silence, strategic messages, or ways to create jealousy. But those things are temporary. They may create a reaction, but they don't create genuine value. Real value comes from becoming someone whose attention actually means something, and that begins with your own life. If you have no direction, you'll naturally make other people your direction. You'll spend your day checking whether they replied. You'll wonder who viewed your story. You'll analyze every change in someone's tone. You'll measure your worth by whether someone wants your attention. But when you have a mission, your attention becomes selective. You have things to build, skills to develop, problems to solve, goals that require your focus. And suddenly, you are no longer sitting around waiting for someone to give your life meaning. You are creating meaning yourself. That changes the energy you bring into every relationship. You don't approach people from emptiness. You approach them from abundance. You don't think, please notice me. You think, I have a life I'm already committed to. That difference can be felt. People recognize when someone has direction. They recognize discipline. They recognize someone who doesn't abandon their priorities every time another person demands attention. And discipline is attractive because it communicates self-respect. If you tell yourself you're going to wake up early, wake up early. If you decide to improve your health, follow through. If you say you're going to learn a skill, keep learning when the excitement disappears. If you have a goal, work toward it even when nobody is watching. Every promise you keep to yourself strengthens your identity. And the stronger your identity becomes, the less you need other people to constantly reassure you. This also changes the way you communicate. You stop trying to impress everyone. You stop telling people everything you're planning. You stop performing success. Instead, you let results accumulate quietly. Maybe you're learning something new. Maybe you're building a business. Maybe you're improving your body. Maybe you're studying. Maybe you're developing your career. You don't need to announce every step. Let people notice the transformation later. There is something psychologically powerful about encountering someone months later and realizing they've changed. They're calmer, more confident, more skilled, more disciplined, more focused. And you weren't there to witness the process. You simply see the result. That creates curiosity, not because they manipulated you into wondering, because growth naturally creates questions. What have they been doing? What changed? What are they working toward? That is a much stronger form of influence than trying to manufacture mystery. Your attention also becomes valuable when you stop giving it away indiscriminately. If you respond instantly to everyone, engage in every argument, answer every unnecessary question, and spend hours entertaining people who contribute nothing to your life, your attention becomes cheap, not because you are unimportant, because you have trained people to expect unlimited access. Instead, become intentional. Give your attention fully when it matters. Listen deeply, be present, but don't waste your energy everywhere. There is a difference between being generous and being constantly available. There is a difference between being friendly and being desperate for connection. There is a difference between caring about people and abandoning yourself for them. Your life should remain yours. Your goals should remain yours. Your standards should remain yours. And the people you allow close should add something meaningful rather than constantly consuming what you have built. This doesn't mean becoming arrogant. It means becoming responsible for your own energy. When someone earns your attention, give it sincerely. When someone deserves your trust, give it gradually. When someone shows genuine interest, meet them with genuine interest. But never give someone your entire emotional world simply because they gave you a little attention. Let relationships develop through reciprocity. Let people contribute. Let them demonstrate consistency. And as your life becomes richer, your presence naturally becomes more meaningful. People don't need to think about you because you demanded their attention. They think about you because interactions with you had substance, because you were focused, because you listened, because you had depth, because you weren't desperate to be remembered. And that leads to the final lesson. The most memorable person isn't the one constantly trying to occupy someone's mind. It is the person who becomes so secure within themselves that they no longer need to know whether they are being remembered at all. And now you reach the final shift, the one that makes everything else meaningful. You stop caring so much about whether people are thinking about you, because the moment you become obsessed with occupying someone's mind, you have already given them too much space in yours. Ride that again. Your goal was never to make someone constantly wonder about you. Your goal was to become someone who doesn't need that validation. There is a huge difference. One person is calculating every move. When should I reply? Should I wait? Should I post this? Should I disappear? Will they miss me? Are they thinking about me? That person may look confident from the outside, but internally their attention is completely controlled by someone else. The truly confident person doesn't live that way. They communicate when they genuinely want to communicate. They take space when they need space. They show interest when interest is real. They walk away when something no longer serves them. And then they return to their own life. No performance, no psychological games, no obsession with the outcome. That is emotional independence. And emotional independence is one of the most attractive qualities a person can develop because it communicates something very rare. I want connection, but I don't need it to feel complete. Think about the difference between wanting someone and needing someone. Wanting allows freedom, needing creates fear. When you need someone's attention, every silence feels threatening. When you want their attention but don't need it, silence becomes normal. You can enjoy their presence without becoming dependent on it. You can appreciate their affection without building your identity around it. You can miss them without chasing them. You can care without losing yourself. That is where your power becomes stable. And this is why self-mastery matters more than psychological tactics. If you want people to think about you, become someone worth remembering. If you want your presence to matter, make your presence meaningful. If you want your attention to feel valuable, stop giving it away without intention. If you want people to respect your absence, build a life that doesn't collapse when you're alone. Everything begins with you, your discipline, your emotional control, your standards, your curiosity, your purpose, your ability to listen, your ability to walk away, your ability to enjoy your own company. These qualities create a presence that doesn't require constant maintenance. And there is something else you must understand. Being memorable doesn't mean being perfect. People don't remember perfection. They remember authenticity. They remember the person who spoke honestly. They remember the person who made them laugh. They remember the person who challenged an idea without attacking them. They remember the person who listened when everyone else was waiting to speak. They remember the person who had a strange story, a unique perspective, or a genuine passion. They remember the person who seemed comfortable being exactly who they were. So stop trying to manufacture an image. Build substance instead. Become more knowledgeable, become more disciplined, become more curious, become more emotionally intelligent. Develop interests that genuinely excite you, cultivate goals that challenge you. Spend time alone without feeling empty. Learn to enjoy your own thoughts, because when you become comfortable with yourself, you stop performing for everyone else. And that is when your personality becomes more natural, your conversations become easier, your confidence becomes quieter, your presence becomes less forced. You no longer enter a room thinking, how can I make them notice me? You enter thinking, what can I learn here? What can I contribute? What experience can I have? That shift changes everything. And paradoxically, the less you try to control whether people think about you, the more naturally you can become memorable. Because people can feel the difference between someone who is trying to create an impression and someone who is simply living with purpose. One is performance, the other is presence. And presence lasts longer. So don't chase someone's thoughts. Don't measure your worth by their attention. Don't manipulate absence. Don't manufacture jealousy. Don't become obsessed with being unforgettable. Become so grounded in yourself that whether someone remembers you tomorrow or forgets you next month, you remain exactly who you are. Keep building, keep learning, keep growing, keep protecting your peace. Keep becoming someone you respect when nobody else is watching, because the ultimate form of influence is not controlling what other people think about you. It is controlling who you become when nobody is thinking about you at all. And when you master that, your presence stops being something you have to force and becomes something people naturally remember.